The fighting began Monday, a day after billionaire Petro Poroshenko was elected Ukraine's president with 54% of the vote. He later promised to crush the separatist revolt in the region, including Donetsk, not in months, but in hours.
We will defend and clean and bring the peace in the Donbass, including the fighting against terror. This is one of the main functions of the state, to defend the people. That's the case.
And while Russian President Vladimir Putin insisted Ukraine's military operations must stop, the State Department said Kiev had Washington's support.
The Ukrainian authorities have every right to certainly take steps to maintain calm and order where they see fit.
For more, I'm joined from Kiev by Andrij Dobriansky, an executive board member of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, as well as UN representative for the Ukrainian World Congress. He served as an election monitor in the presidential elections. Andrij, good to have you with us. We have to start with the violence in the east. Pro-Russian separatists tried to take control of the airport one of the airports in the east. Government forces overwhelmed them there in Donetsk. Dozens were dead at the airport. More pro-Russian separatists dead in other clashes. Is the government taking control?
Absolutely. I think what you're seeing today, the day after the presidential election, is in fact the newly elected president, Poroshenko. We know it's a victory by a landslide, but I'm not in any doubt that he is involved in discussions with the current prime minister in terms of having a strong hand in what's happening in Ukraine right now. I believe the new government of Ukraine wants to show Russia and the world that they will do what it takes to defend the territorial integrity of Ukraine, which means taking on these terrorist operations. I'm kind of confused that I still have to use the word terrorist because at this point we're seeing armored personnel carriers and armored vehicles shooting into civilian areas. We're really at a point where it is almost at the level of a war. And in that case, it's not so much terrorism, but looking at the country that's opposite of us and sending in their men, armored personnel into Ukraine.
Well, Poroshenko, the newly elected president, has been quoted as saying that he will not allow eastern Ukraine to become a Somalia. He says that the operation against the rebels should not last months, it should last hours. So is he going to take a hard line, and is that supported by most Ukrainians?
Absolutely. There is a great outpouring of support for the Ukrainian army, which has been completely rebuilt from the ground up since that fateful day in February when the Revolution of Dignitary finally stormed out Yanukovych and convinced him that he had to flee the country. What we're seeing now is a military that's massed on the Ukrainian borders in numbers that even Putin could not consider of several months ago. And what we're seeing in the populace, I see on the streets of Kyiv, I see in all the areas that our election monitors were about, I see people who are frustrated with the Ukrainian army not doing anything to fight back against this incursion. This pushback right now is being supported by the people.
But you mentioned the Russians, and the Russian government is still calling for the Ukrainian government to stop its actions against the pro-Russian rebels. Is there concern that the Russian bear will continue to support these destabilizing efforts or do even more than just that?
There is great concern about that here in Ukraine. People in Ukraine here have a mentality that there is a war going on. They know that Russia has invaded. They know that there is nothing that's going to stop Putin because of their understanding what a Soviet mentality is and of their understanding of who Mr. Putin is. This is a man who is a rogue actor and a criminal. We should remember always he is the man responsible for the deaths of journalists such as Anna Politkovskaya or Alexander Litvinenko. Year after year, we see opposition leaders assassinated in Russia. Year after year, we see journalists and other people hounded down. And people seem to forget that attacks such as the ones against Chechnya were condemned by the European Court of Human Rights for their violations. This is a man who does not stop at simple negotiations, and we are thankful, I believe the people of Ukraine are thankful, to see finally a Ukrainian army that's willing to step to the border against this.
A final question for you. You were there to observe the elections. What did you see?
I saw a whole country who was just radiant about joyous, in fact, in terms of going out to vote. It's a great time of year to be in Ukraine right now because the flowers are blooming. The children are finishing their exams, so they're all in their best dress, their embroidered shirts, and you saw whole families coming out together, children in hand, everybody coming out to vote. The turnout numbers were incredibly high, even in areas we did not expect to have a strong turnout. So what we're seeing is that people were really glad to put in place a president that has the people's will behind him, but they're not done with the revolution. You can see maybe behind me that the Maidan tents are still up, and they will keep fighting for what the spirit of the Maidan was, which was more productivity for the people, a stronger opportunity. It's really a sense of freedom opportunity that people like myself from America can really understand.
Andrij Dobriansky from Kiev, appreciate you joining us. Thank you. For more on what's next for Ukraine after the election, I'm joined from Washington, D.C. by Ambassador William Taylor, Vice President for the Middle East and Africa for the U.S. Institute of Peace. Ambassador Taylor served as an election observer in Ukraine over the weekend and as America's ambassador to Ukraine from 2006 to 2009. I know you just got back from Kiev, Ambassador. It's good of you to join us so quickly. You spent time in Kiev, in Odessa, and in a Russian-speaking town north of Crimea. What was the response outside the capital to the election and the possibility, however endangered right now, that we will see a unified Ukraine?
I think there's been a real shift, Antonio, a momentum shift in favor of Ukraine. You see this politically with the election, with this very large turnout and very large support for the president now, President Poroshenko. But also you see a shift in momentum on the military side. I think the new president has been willing to take strong action. His military is now moving forward in Donetsk, and as I understand it, the airport is now under control of the Ukrainians. So I think this shift is a good one. It has been welcomed across the country.
And we just spoke to Andrij Dobriansky, another American observer, who said the mood was almost festive in Ukraine's west during the election. Do people who support the government think that the election can help end the conflict with the separatists and with Moscow?
I think they do. I think they do. The festive mood in the west was mirrored, a festive mood unexpectedly in the south, where I was. The south, it was a Russian-speaking city of Kherson. And I've been there before, and now it was very different. It was very festive, enthusiastic. The Ukrainian flags all over the city, not just from the public buildings, but in girls' hair, in shoelaces, across apartments. So it was really a dramatic demonstration of support for the government, which I think then leads to the ability, a new ability for the government in Kyiv to take the responsibility to make the changes, to talk to the separatists, or at least talk to the people in the southeast about their grievances. And this gives them the confidence to be able to do that.